Hello and welcome to Sophomore Grammar Video 1. So in Sophomore Grammar Video 1, we're really just going to review what you should have done over the summer and what you learned freshman year. We're just going to do a quick review of comma rules. So the objective is, student, you will be able to apply comma rules when correcting sentences. Let's do a review of using commas in compound and complex sentences. All right, so first of all, compound sentences, all right, is where you have two independent clauses connected with a coordinating conjunction. So those conjunctions are and, nor, or, but, so, yet. All right, so write that down. So you have an independent clause, and then you have comma, and you have a conjunction. And again, remember what we talked about freshman year, the conjunction that joins two independent clauses will either be and, nor, but, yet, or so. Okay? So those are the conjunctions that you can have whenever you're trying to combine two independent clauses. All right, so just a note again, with a compound sentence, you have two independent clauses, so two complete sentences joined together by one of these conjunctions. Okay, let's look at a complex sentence. A complex sentence, what you have is you have a dependent clause plus an independent clause. Okay? Your dependent clause is going to start with a subordinating conjunction. So it's going to start with a conjunction subordinating conjunction. Some examples of subordinating conjunctions are when, if. So when, if. Some other ones that it could start with are although. If you look at your summer grammar notes, you should have like a different list of different subordinating conjunctions. So a dependent clause, okay, it's never gonna start with one of these conjunctions, never. So if you have a dependent clause, it's gonna start with a subordinating conjunctions, like conjunctions that are simple to this. Another example could be while, after, before. Those are just examples of some subordinating conjunctions that can be used to begin a dependent clause. So again, if you have a dependent clause, it's not going to start with these, but it's going to start with a conjunction that's like one of these. All right. So the rule is this. So the rule is this. Go and write down. You're going to draw yourself a little box, and you're going to write down the rule. Okay, so the rule is this. When you have a compound sentence, you always separate the compound sentence with a comma plus one of the conjunctions and, but, so, yet, nor, or. But with complex sentences, the rule is different. With complex sentences, you only need a comma if the dependent clause comes first. So you only use a comma when the dependent clause comes first. All right. So I did not leave myself enough room. So go ahead, we're going to keep talking about the compound complex sentences in this section right here, because sister did not leave herself enough room. So let's go through some examples. So here's an example of a compound sentence. Sally eats cake, but Joe eats cookies. So notice you have two independent clauses, Sally eats cake, Joe eats cookies, And to join those independent clauses, you need a comma and then one of these conjunctions that we talked about earlier. Now let's look with a complex sentence. Complex sentences are different. With a complex sentence, you only need a comma if the dependent clause comes first. So here's an example. If Sally eats cake, she gets sick. Okay, so if Sally eats cake, she gets sick. Here, my dependent clause comes first. You know your dependent clause comes first because it starts with a subordinating conjunction. So just a reminder, you know you have a dependent clause if it's starting out with one of these conjunctions. So you know you have a dependent clause if it starts out with one of these conjunctions. So here's your dependent clause, and here's your independent clause. So because your dependent clause comes first, you need a comma. Now let's say we switch that sentence around. If we say Sally gets sick if she eats cake, here your independent clause is first. So notice it's my independent clause because it's not starting with a subordinating conjunction. So this is my independent clause and this is my dependent clause. So when your independent clause comes first, you don't need a comma. All right, let's review other grammar rules. So I'm going to draw a line. All right, let's review other comma rules. So other rules. Other rules are the following. Okay, other rules are like this. So if you are listing items, you need commas to separate the list. So if you are listing items, you need commas to separate the items. Okay, so that one's pretty straightforward. So if you're listing a series of items like Susie eats cake, Coke, and cookies, you need commas to separate the items. Another rule, you need a comma if you have an intro word or phrase. You need a comma if you have an intro word or phrase. All right. So if you haven't, so again, I'm not going to go into depth because A, we did this freshman year. B, this is something that you should have done over the summer. If you need more details on this, please refer back to your summer videos. But so this is just a brief review of the rules. So you need a comma. So if you're starting a sentence with an intro word or phrase, then you need a comma separating off that intro word or phrase. Number 3, you need a comma if you have a non-essential phrase. So you need a comma. So another way of putting that is you need a comma around interrupters. So if you have a sentence and then you all of a sudden have a word or phrase that's interrupting the flow of the sentence, if that can be taken out, then what you have is an interrupter and you need commas around that. Okay? So what I would like to do right now, I would like to just briefly go into some examples of each. I know you might be out of room on your sheet, so that's okay. You can just take notes on a separate sheet of paper, or you can just take notes in whatever space you have. I just want you to see a couple of examples. So, intro word or phrase. So for example, if I have a sentence that's like, at the store, Bob buys candy. Notice, so I have an intro phrase that starts off the sentence. So if you notice, you know it's an intro phrase because if you take off at the store, Bob buys candy still makes sense. So here you have your intro phrase Okay, so you have something that's starting off the sentence that is not necessary. So when you have an intro phrase, you need a comma. So this is your intro phrase. Okay. So again, just to review, whenever you have an introductory word or phrase and it's not necessary to the sentence, then usually you put a comma after that introductory word or phrase. Let's look at one example of an interrupter. Okay, so you also need commas around interrupters. So for example, if I had a sentence like, Sally, the science teacher, loves art. So again, an interrupter is a word or a group of words that interrupts the flow of a sentence and it's not necessary to the sentence. So if you look at the science teacher, this is going to be my interrupter. And you know it's an interrupter because if you take the science teacher out of the sentence still makes sense. Sally loves art perfectly makes sense. So you know you have an interrupter if you can take it out of the sentence and it would still make sense. So whenever you have an interrupter, you need commas. You need commas surrounding the interrupter. All right. So those are the basic rules. Those are the basic rules of comma rules. There are practice worksheets that go with this. I don't know if your teacher gave it to you or not, but there are practice worksheets that go with it if you'd like an extra practice. Anyway, so if you need extra review, you can either come see your teacher, come see your old English teacher, or you can re-watch the summer grammar videos. God bless you and have a good day.